On this episode of Law Weekly, we revisit the Enhanced Trade Investment Partnership ETIP agreement and especially the issue of legal services. We have the views of a life bencher and co-chair of the Legal Services Subgroup of the Economic Development Forum, EDF, Mr. George Etomi. Also showing on the program, the chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, speaks on some of the new ways the Anti-graft agency is doing its job, plus the weekly recap of the top legal stories in the news. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Shola Shuyeli. We revisit the issue of the much talked about ETIP agreement and especially the issue of legal services. My guest, George Etomi, served as the co-chair of the Economic Development Forum, EDF, involved in some of the high-profile discussions leading up to the agreement. He believes that government and lawyers need to put in place some policies and regulations to protect Nigerian lawyers and deepen legal services. Here's our conversation.
The starting point to note is that what was signed was the MOU. And it's so important to distinguish between the MOU and the trade agreement proper. Secondly, the agreement covers quite a number of spectrum of trade, both in goods and services. So there's a lot in terms of benefits to Nigeria if you're looking at the package in totality. Then the third one, as it concerns legal services, which we're all passionate about, again, was meant to have been captured in the MOU as a work in progress. Because as the president of the NBA rightly noted, I was with him in London in October, where we were putting finishing touches to what was then the EDF, the Economic Development Forum, which then metamorphosed into the ETIP. And at that time, they were eager to sign the MOU because it was important for both countries to show that progress had been made regarding the trade discussions. And we expressed that law wasn't ready because we were still discussing so many things that would be part of the trade in legal services package. But the desire at that time was to have a comprehensive MOU. So we then agreed with them that the MOU should have wordings that would capture the fact that we were still talking on trade in legal services. That's where we left things. So naturally, it came as a surprise to us when we saw that the MOU had been concluded, and then there was that tweet, which has since been retracted, about legal services. And quite naturally, it evoked a lot of passion. And you can understand that. And if you recall my days as chair of the SBL, was when we first sounded the alarm that the world was globalizing. And thanks to technology, the deployment of trade in services was going to be more seamless. Unlike in those days when the struggle was whether or not law firms will come and open up offices physically here and do quite a number of things. But now, for all I care, it is happening. But the passion this has evoked underscores the point we were making then at the SBL, that whether or not we like it, society is evolving, the world is evolving, and many of the things we thought were territorially ours will begin to melt away into this globalization spectrum. And I think we did a good job sensitizing the average Nigerian lawyer about this phenomenon. And I think also it's to our credit that a lot of Nigerian law firms have accepted the challenge, and from the days where we used to have 10, 20-man law firms, we're now beginning to boast about 100-man, 150-man law firms. is a direct response to this challenge. And we must keep up with that trajectory. But the importance of a trade agreement, like with any other agreement, is that it sets out the parameters for behavior and comes with it sanctions for breaching it. And I would always advocate that instead of shutting our doors unrealistically, we should work towards reaching an agreement that clearly defines the parameters for how foreign lawyers can practice here. And if we take examples with what other countries have done, China, India, that's very close to our position, is that they have, for example, restricted the areas of practice of foreign lawyers. You can come in, practice your own law, but don't practice our law. You cannot even venture into some areas at all. And you must provide support to local firms. So if we can build on that, my advice will simply be, let's work towards deepening the legal services market. I think the concern we all have here, when we say we can't compete, we can't do this, is because the market appears shallow, and perhaps it's indeed shallow. In one of the negotiations we had in the UK, I asked the same question, and they were throwing different numbers. So I think the first responsibility we owe ourselves as lawyers is to understand the market we operate in. And we must be scientific about how we want to control this market. So we have to do our research. The NBA should take it up as a challenge to find out what is this market worth. If you ask any other business, they can tell you. Is it $50 million? Is it $500 million? Is it $2 billion? You know that first. And when you know that globally, you then tell yourself, okay, how much of this money is actually remain here? And if we determine as a matter of policy that if, for example, it's $2 billion per annum, we must ensure that at least $1 billion remain here. $1 billion in legal fees will deepen the Nigerian legal services market.
So I understand you to be saying that rather than resist the move, there should be regulation and the NBA should be leading that move.
Absolutely. The NBA should work, of course, with the Attorney General. It's important. This is not something you do by force or by fiat or by whatever. There's a lot of persuasion involved. Go and check through all the deals that the federal government is doing, and what is the popular excuse? Oh, the expertise is not here. And I don't agree with that. Because if you look at the top law firms in Nigeria, there's hardly any aspect of legal services they cannot deliver on. They may be hamstrung with numbers, and that's why I said for those aspects of it for which they need additional support, they can go outside. But you just make it a policy, if not law, that none of these MDAs should consume legal services directly from overseas. They must brief existing local firms who can then in turn brief their counterparts for those aspects of the legal services that we cannot get. And if you make it the policy, you will retain a lot of the money. And don't forget what I'm saying. I'm not saying exclude the foreign legal. When they come, they will perform with the Nigerian counterparts. So instead of supplanting firms that have worked so hard to establish their names, they actually come to support them. In that spectre, you will then begin to have your 200, 300-man law firms and be able to absorb these nearly 4,000 to 6,000 lawyers we produce every year. Good quality. Secondly, any deal you want to reach should include back office support. Because the only reason I'll be looking for a foreign law firm to support me is mainly for back office support. It's the equivalent of technical services in other areas. Not to come and draft routine agreements, but give me that back office support. And if I have access to that back office support, I can improve services here as well.
Now, away from that issue, let's move on to another topical issue. The Supreme Court has just sworn in 11 new justices of the court. And for the first time in a long time or ever, the court has the full complement of 21 justices of the court as envisaged by the Constitution. What would you say that this means for justice delivery in Nigeria? And as a senior legal practitioner, what are your expectations from the court?
I am looking to see a judiciary that should reform itself. When we speak about the operators of our democracy, the politicians, reforming themselves, it's true for the judiciary as well. I have always said that our judges do not know how much power they possess to straighten the system out. And that's why they are at times pushed and jerked around by the executive. If judges honor their creed to be fair and firm, the judiciary can play a lot of role to sanitize the system. So I think they should have a conversation. There should be a judges' conference. It's a great thing to have the full complement of 21 justices for the Supreme Court. So the first thing to do is to decongest that court. Second is to limit the number of cases that get to the Supreme Court. So every single motion, everything is appealed to the Supreme Court, almost as if they don't have work to do. And please, let us go back to the good old behavioral pattern for judges. They should be seen less as playing an inferior role to the other arms of government. I think that's what's frustrating the populace. Because in the past, if you threaten somebody with court or with whatever, they sit up. But today, it's because of the way the system has undermined judges. That reverence, we're struggling to see it, but hope is not lost. I interact with a lot of judges, and I know that many of them too are frustrated. They would like to express themselves.
Finally, let me say congratulations on clocking 70. You clocked 70 a few weeks back, about 2 weeks ago, and you've hardly slowed down from speaking engagements to mentoring young ones, and recently you were even named the Business of Law icon in Nigeria. What are some of the greatest lessons that life has taught you at 70? And what are some of the things that you think that younger lawyers can learn from your life?
First of all, thank you for the compliments. 70, I can hardly believe it myself. I can hardly believe it myself. And July this year, I'll also be 47 years at the bar. So when you look back, you have a point there. What are the greatest lessons I have learned and what I think the young ones should learn? Patience, doggedness, faithfulness to the profession. Incidentally, I've been monofocused, as it were, in the legal profession, and I've just enjoyed my own bit of imparting knowledge, adding value to the profession. And when I look back, one of the biggest legacies that I derive pleasure from is looking at how the SBL, from conception to date, is actually fulfilling the mandate of broadening the spectrum of business law. I always give credit to my mentor, Chivogu Banjo, without whom I would perhaps not have known the business law spectrum. But I'm happy that I've been able to build on that legacy and to then make it even broader for young lawyers. Then in terms of reshaping the legal landscape generally, I still think that law is the heartbeat of any society. And it doesn't matter in what shape or form it comes. Whether you are as legislators, many of them are lawyers, those in the executive, those in the judiciary, those at the local government level. So if every lawyer, no matter where they find themselves, no aspect of the law where they find themselves, can just remember one thing, that law is the most viable tool to reshape society, and they think that way, I think we can see a pathway to law engineering growth. At 70, I have mixed feelings about what I've been able to achieve, given the promise from when I started out to what it is now. There's a lot has been done, but I still think a lot more could have been done, because I look at some of the groundbreaking transactions. I participated in the metro line that got botched. It's taken us almost 40 years for us to be launching blue line, red line. Almost 40 years of wasted, growth, if you call me that. And outside of Lagos, no capital city has any form of mass transit. Whereas if metro line had stayed, Abuja would naturally have one, and many state capitals. It would be an election promise thing. So when you look back at some of those things, you have your own regrets. I participated heavily when Abuja was being built, and as a young lawyer, I used to go there. It was a construction site. And I'm proud at the key projects, the Jebi Dam, the Lower Usman Dam. We were the lawyers on it at the time, the big hotels there. And for me, it was very adventurous, and it made me believe in Nigeria. So I look back with a sense of pride, and of course, the work I'm doing in the international arena. I'm in the International Trade and Legal Services Committee of the IBA. Well, by the way, we're talking about globalization of legal services. And when I'm there and I'm dealing, at the back of my mind, it's what's in the best interest of the Nigerian lawyer. And that's why, as you know me, I just love mentoring young ones. And I'm so happy that many of you, that includes you, have actually taken up the challenge. And when I look back, I say, thank God for all he has done. And I feel fulfilled at 70.
Thanks for staying tuned. The chairman of the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, Ola Olukoyede, was the keynote speaker at the 20th anniversary lecture of a leading non-governmental organization, Human and Environmental Development Agenda, Header Resource Center, which held last weekend in Lagos. He spoke on the topic, navigating the nexus of anti-corruption and good governance in Nigeria, striking the balance for economic, social, and environmental justice.
Upon my assumption of office, between then and now, I've received over 5,000 petitions. I'm not talking of just the one we received, the one that we have checked, and we discovered that there was substance in it. That's just for one agency, yes, over 5,000. As I'm talking to you, I have approved investigation of over 3,000 cases in less than 4 months. What is my capacity? How many staff do I have? What resources do I have access to? In less than 4 months, we secured conditions of over 700, recovered over 16 billion naira, over $10 billion within 100 days in the office. Now, I give you a scenario. If I've been able to recover over 16 billion naira in 10 days, imagine how much would have been stolen. Typically, for you to recover 5 naira out of 10 naira that was stolen, you must have done a great job. So I can tell you for real that for that 60 billion naira to have been recovered, trillions have been stolen. But I still believe that things can change. I'm highly optimistic. There are certain things I've seen that make me believe that things can change. And these are privileged information that I've seen that make me think things will change. And that was what informed my policy objectives when I assumed office. That we are going to use the instrumentality of anti-corruption to stimulate the economy. And we need to do that. We need to do that. Create wealth, generate employment. And we're also going to play by the rules. Because if an anti-corruption agent does not obey court order, then how do you want to fight the battle? How do you want to win?
There is a need for the country itself to define what is wrong and what is right. Because as of today, there seems to me to be total collapse of values and virtues in the society, to the extent that people don't even know what is right, and everything has suddenly become relative. You say somebody has stolen today, the other person will say, if he has stolen, is it the worst person to steal? Or what is your own? And so on and so forth. That means that there is no minimum content in it.
So it is more for Nigerians actually to take the destiny into their hands. And interestingly, we have a very challenging situation, and that is where we would want to also see that things can possibly change. If you don't have an effective policing system with integrity in the system, in the country, and the judiciary is not acting as the last hope of the common man, then there can never be any progress. Unfortunately, Nigeria has been dealing with that of the police, but we are also moving to that of the judiciary. So if you see what has been coming out from the judicial pronouncements recently with respect to people charged with corruption, we might be having futile efforts of the anti-corruption agencies, because the anti-corruption agencies can only investigate and then charge and prosecute in court. It is the court that will make the final pronouncement. But where the court starts discharging those that are charged for corruption, then we're in big trouble, and that is already happening.
So it's important to get Nigerians on board. I mean, all the problems Nigeria is witnessing now, insecurity, hunger, price hike, poor health system, these are all symptoms of corruption. And corruption is entrenched because there's impunity. So we want to ensure that there will be consequences. And where consequences is about to be jettisoned, that the people demand that there should be consequences. And if you take it from there, and also take it from the bottom of letting people know what constitutes corruption and the impact it's going to have on all of us, we hope that in a few years to come, we should have a Nigeria that is at least saner, safer, and has more chances of being a prosperous nation.
And just before we go, some lawyers have been reacting to the swearing in of new justices of the Supreme Court. We have the reactions of two of them up next.
For the very first time since 1999, when we became a democratic government, we are having for the first time full complement of the Supreme Court. Before today, there were just 10 justices of the Supreme Court, but now we have 21. So we have every cause to rejoice. But to whom much is given, much is desired. With a full complement of the Supreme Court, we expect that the justice system in the Supreme Court will move very fast. Before now, we had cases being slowed down because of manpower problem. But with 21 justices of the Supreme Court, our expectation is that we'll have more cases being resolved by the Supreme Court, and we'll also have enriched and more robust judgment from the Supreme Court. Those are the expectations of lawyers and also of litigants, and indeed of citizens of this country, that who bear in mind that justice delayed is justice denied. So we want to see speedy and robust justice system.
I believe that they've been invited to work, and we expect that they should immediately, without any delay, swing into action. We want to make sure that we radically reduce the backlog of cases. There are a lot lingering. And to think that people go all over the world saying that for a case to go through the hierarchy of Nigerian judiciary, it will take almost 30 years. It's not a good advertisement for our judicial system. So now we mean business. We believe that we can reduce things drastically and make sure that we can even contain things to maybe 6 years, 7 years, going from the High Court. So that's why they've been appointed.
And here's a quick recap of some of the top legal stories in the news.
We begin with the report that the Kogi State Election Petition Tribunal sitting in Abuja has adjourned hearing in the petition filed by the Social Democratic Party, the SDP, and its governorship candidate, Murtala Ajaka, to March the 4th. The chairman of the three-member panel, Justice Yusuf Kudu, adjourned proceedings after counsel for the petitioners identified the number of BVAS machines used in some local government areas of Kogi State. This was done in compliance with the order of the court that the BVAS machines be brought to the court and that INEC should provide someone to verify the results stored in the BVAS machine with respect to the 5 local governments being contended. Staying in Abuja, the Federal High Court has fixed 19th and 20th of March 2024 for the resumption of the trial of the leader of the proscribed indigenous people of Biafra, Nnamdi Kanu, who is facing charges of alleged treasonable felony. The trial judge, Justice Binta Nyako, fixed the date after taking arguments from the parties in the case. At the resumed session, new lawyers announced appearances for parties in the suit. Mr. Aloye Jofo replaced Michael Zekome as the senior counsel representing the IPOB leader, while the prosecuting team is led by Senior Advocate of Nigeria, Adegboyega Awomolo, who replaced David Kaswe from the Federal Ministry of Justice. In Port Harcourt, the Rivers State High Court has thrown out a preliminary objection brought before it by the Nigerian police to challenge the jurisdiction of the court to hear the fundamental rights suit brought against the Chief of Staff to the State Governor, Honorable Edison Ehie. The court held that the objection was lacking in merit. Justice Sika Aprioku, who also held that the court had jurisdiction, maintained that the non-joinder of the Nigeria police does not render the suit incompetent as the Commissioner of Police is already a party to it. He awarded the cost of 100,000 naira in favor of Edison Ehie. The Federal High Court sitting in Lagos has restrained telecom operators in Nigeria from deactivating or barring any line or SIM whose user did not link same to the National Identification Number NIN. Justice Ambrose Lewis Alagua restrained the telecom operators from taking such action, ruling on an application filed by a lawyer, Olukoya Ogungbeje. Now, the applicant, Ogungbeje, had asked the court for an injunction pending appeal restraining the telecom companies from further outright barring, deactivating, and/or restricting any SIM cards or phone lines of any Nigerian citizen on February 28, 2024, or any other scheduled date pending the hearing and determination of his appeal at the Court of Appeal of Nigeria. And we round up with the report that the trial of the chairman of Ibeto Energy Development Company, Chief Cletus Ibeto, over an alleged 4.8 billion naira fraud will commence on March 11, 2024, before a new judge, Justice Oyindamola Ogala of the Lagos High Court, Ikeja. That's because the Chief Judge of Lagos, Justice Kazim Alogba, has reassigned the defendant's case file following the petition against former trial judge, Justice Ismail Ijelu. When the matter came up on Friday, March 1st, before the new trial judge, Justice Ogala, neither the prosecution, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission (EFCC), nor the defendants were, however, present in court, prompting the judge to order that hearing notices should be issued to all the parties.
And this is where we adjourn proceedings for today. Do remember to check out the Channels TV website for a replay of this episode of the program, as well as past episodes. Please also send in any feedback via our social media handles. I'm Shola Shele. Thank you for watching and see you next time.